Like it or not, meetings are now a regular fixture of school life. But meetings can be time-consuming, as Year 5 teacher Trudy Johnson knows all too well, and her time is at a premium. So how do you make meetings more effective? We asked management trainer David Morgan to observe a meeting at Trudy's school, Stoke Lodge Primary in Bristol, and in discussion with the participants afterwards, evaluate their approach.
First of all, you need to have an agenda. Take time to prepare an agenda, an objective-based agenda that's going to add value to the meeting. Secondly, you need to prepare any supporting material, any supporting notes that will guide the meeting attendees during the session. Participation is key. If you're at the meeting, you need to have your voice heard. Participation by all. The next point is to record. You need to record using a style, a technique that suits the meeting type. And finally, take time, albeit a small amount of time, to evaluate the success of the meeting. What went well, what didn't go so well, with a view to improving how you approach it on the next time.
A written brief for today's focus group meeting has been circulated by head teacher Richard Clark. Staff have been asked to refine the curriculum map to ensure the humanities subjects are integrated and draw up an action plan to accommodate any changes. And Trudy Johnson has been given the task of making this happen.
I've prepared for this meeting by drawing up an agenda of the points that I think are important to discuss, and I've pulled it all together and I've written an agenda. So hopefully that will be what we'll stick to. I've given each part of the meeting a sort of rough time in my head, so I know how long I want the meeting to last. And that's really what I've done, and given it perhaps a little bit more thought than some people, so as I, can hopefully get a balance of opinions throughout, really.
Chairing meetings in this school is seen as part of leadership development and rotated around the staff. And today it's Trudy's turn.
The points I'd like to discuss is really, for the last 4 terms, we've been trying to integrate the humanities with the geography and the history and other subjects where possible. And really it's just like, what's worked so far? What kind of problems have arisen? And how it can all be overcome, and we can really take it forward for the next meeting. And at the end of this meeting, it'd be really nice to have some actions to take forward to the next meeting so we can discuss it in more detail. So it's very much just an overview today. So we're not going to go down the skills route or anything like that today. It's just going to be an overview of what you'll think. So, over to you, really.
So how did the start of the meeting go? Caroline Stubbs, Year 2 teacher, and Trudy await David's verdict.
First thing I'd like to say, well done, a genuine well done. Chairing at the best of times is a challenge, and opening the meeting is probably one of the scariest moments. So how do you feel the opening to the session went?
I think it went okay, to be honest. I sort of planned what I was going to do and I kind of stuck to it and went with it, really. So as far as the opening goes, I was quite happy with it.
Do you think that there would have been some benefit in maybe offering what is a very good structure, a gender-based structure, offering that up to the participants maybe slightly ahead of the session in exactly the same way as the head's brief was offered?
Yeah, I think it would have been something that was new to everybody, something that, so as not to be a surprise, I think, yes, perhaps. Yeah. To give them sort of the agenda beforehand and sort of have a look at and to have some thoughts about it might really been quite useful.
So if it had caught them cold, that perhaps would have been the best approach. Yeah. Good, okay.
I think the things to be overcome really are looking back at what we've done and saying, OK, yes, we can adapt and we can sort of change it slightly. There's lots of different things you can do.
Meetings offer a chance to share information and have questions answered. But what's the best way to do this? Advanced preparation can be a factor.
So when you're doing yours and you're doing an overall topic, do you still subject base it?
What we did when we did Under the Sea is we did 6 weeks of geography to do with the sea, and then we did 6 weeks of history to do with Under the Sea. So yes, they were separated that way. We don't tend to teach them mixed up throughout the weeks, but we are with dinosaurs, we are teaching it mixed up. So I think it depends what topic we are doing to which way we do it, really.
What about the other subjects? Are you linking those in?
We are only tenuously with art and DT, and the fact that we did under the sea puppets, like octopuses and shark hand puppets and things like that. So DT, a lot have been linked.
Clearly what we were seeing there was a discussion around one of the themes, or perhaps the main theme within the meeting. Scope for preparation ahead of the meeting or not? Would it have been beneficial?
If each of the year groups had the overview of what the other year groups were doing as their subject titles, that would have been beneficial.
Right.
But also if you could have looked at some of the planning maybe, that would have been quite beneficial, I think, if we'd have had our humanities planning with us.
So perhaps some notes, some useful information cascaded perhaps along with your more detailed agenda, passed out beforehand, say a week beforehand, to just not discourage that sort of discussion, but maybe to shorten it somewhat.
Yeah. The preparation would be really quite useful, but you do need to have the discussion to pick apart what you can see on a plan. You can only see so much on a plan. It only gives you so much information.
Yeah.
And I think to pick it apart and just to have that discussion so we all know is quite useful. But yeah, it could have been sort of.
So the discussion
short.
itself very valid within the context of the meeting,
I think
but
so.
some background information beforehand may have been
Mm.
useful. Okay.
And we very much under knowledge and
The classic notes on a flip chart approach was used to note the brainstorming ideas around the table. But is it effective? Does the chart distract participants?
If you're not careful, you end up doing things just for the sake of it, rather than doing it because it's worthwhile to do it, just to incorporate.
Whilst on occasions I felt the flip chart dominated the meeting,
I
and
agree, it did.
and the focus was often on the flip chart and not on the chair, as it should be. I mean, that's something that just needs to be managed. But I felt the flip chart worked very well. What about the expectation as far as the participants were concerned about getting something, a summary of the comments on the flip chart before the next meeting? Is there an expectation that will happen?
There isn't an expectation that will happen, because I think in the jobs that we do, we have so many bits of paper, and I think because of the way this particular meeting is going, and perhaps other meetings might be very different, there isn't really much need for people to have the notes from that flip chart.
Right.
I don't think it's hugely relevant to them. However, that was just that meeting. In other types of meeting, the information might be relevant.
Okay.
So therefore, I think it's difficult to say categorically that we do that one way or another.
But you've clearly shown that a mixture of styles works depending on the meeting type. Okay, good.
What we're talking about, I feel, is we're talking about being skills driven.
Yeah.
So if we're saying, right, in DT, we're looking at
To encourage participation, it's really important that everyone at the meeting feels free to speak. Chair of Governors, Dennis Richardson, wasn't introduced at the start of this meeting, but towards the end he did find his voice.
My daughter's doing angles at the moment, aren't they, doing acute and obtuse, but you could link that into, say with the tutors, with the Matthew, they would have used angles and that to find their way to the new world as such. So it's giving them it gives them a purpose for learning, because that's the problem, isn't it? You can teach someone something and then think to themselves, well, why have I had to learn that? You know, what's the point of it? So that's where these links can be quite useful, I think, isn't it?
You agree that you actually do want to make the links and make it,
Any comments about that particular clip, the involvement of both parent governors? I think the second parent governor came in towards the end.
I think it was good to have their contribution. I mean, they're in quite a lot of our meetings, and we sort of see quite a lot of them. So it's nice that they always sort of have something of value to contribute, because they've both got children at the school. So it's quite interesting sort of hearing what they've got to say as a parent.
And how the parent governor role, how was that role established at the outset? Was it clear as to what their role was within the meeting?
Mainly I think it's to sort of widen our views about certain topics. So not long ago we were looking at homework.
I mean, again, establishing roles and introduction at the beginning, do you think?
I mean, that may have been a good thing to do, to introduce them all at the beginning and sort of welcoming them. I think, right at the beginning when the agenda was given out.
Yeah.
At the end of a long day, it's tempting to close the meeting swiftly. So what happens here?
What didn't work? We've got 2 more meetings. So in the next 2 meetings, we have to cover the skills. Okay, and I think the titles, that's your homework. And then we've got progression assessment as well, which will probably be the final one, I would have thought. Any of them got anything else to add? Ian? Richard?
Fine, no.
We happy?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. You can all have a sweetie. We should write this up and give it to Richard now. No, we should write it on here.
In terms of the summary that was clear on that clip, what about the benefit of doing that at regular intervals as we go through the hour-long meeting?
Yeah.
In terms of lessening the impact on you, pulling everything together right at the end?
Yeah, I suppose, within it you could have done kind of mini summaries of, oh, well, this is where we're up to now, kind of move, and then keeping it moving forward. I mean, that might have been quite a useful thing to do.
A good idea might be to summarise discussion throughout the meeting and then allow time for a short evaluation of the meeting itself at the end. How did the participants feel this meeting had gone?
I think it would have been nice to, at the end of the meeting, make sure that we definitely agreed something, because the end of the meeting was kind of, well, next week we'll look at skills. We've decided that we want to try this new idea of changing things around and mixing it together, but we hadn't fixed any of the things, so it was very open.
And we were quite lucky that myself and Ian are quite experienced governors, so we were used to going to meetings, so we were able to, you know, air our points of view.
So you didn't feel inhibited in any way? That didn't stop you from taking part in the way you wanted to take part?
Not at all, no. But obviously, I think if there had possibly been a less experienced governor or a new governor, they may have possibly been overawed by the situation and just sat there and listened, basically, to what was being said.
You get a lot out of the meetings, and in the focus group, because there's less of you, you get more time to express your views.
The style adopted for these focus group meetings is evolving, but David Morgan believes it's helpful to stick to his basic guidelines for any meeting.
Okay, what I'd like to finish off with are Dave's top tips as far as meetings are concerned. 5 top tips, just things to bear in mind, a summary of the discussion, let's say, we've just had. Consider the following: agenda, preparation, and again, we're not looking at adding more time to your day, just making better use of the time you have. Participation.
Yeah.
If they're at the meeting, they need to participate, or they should be welcomed into participating. Recording, and finding a method that suits that meeting type. And then evaluating, taking time at the end of the meeting to evaluate how it went. I picked up from the head that this is a new approach.
Yeah.
And maybe things went well, well, they certainly did go well, and things perhaps not so.
Yeah.
And just taking 5 minutes at the end of the meeting to evaluate how the process has gone and then evolve for the next meeting may have been an opportunity.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay?
Good. Thank you.
More information and links about holding effective meetings can be found on the Teachers TV website, www.teachers.tv.